I think we're live. If you can hear me, just push 1 in the chat. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for that confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 551, Black Blockchain Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Grab the link and then we'll get started. All right. Link is in the chat. Let me give a shout out to the people who showed up first. Legendario PR, peace to you. JD Orca, shalom. Jackson J, peace. And Keep It Techie, what up, man? All right, let's get it in. I'm not going to be on here long. Go over a few things and then we'll close out. If there's no questions, anything like that. All right, so first item on the docket is from cointelegraph.com. China's Congress proposes blockchain development fund. Should be interesting. National People's Congress, China's parliament, and Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the most powerful political advisory body in the country, has recently begun their annual sessions. These are widely referred to as the two sessions meetings. These meetings have been ongoing since May 22nd. The National People's Congress, or NPC, is China's top legislative body. Nearly 3,000 delegates from around the country meet once a year to submit proposals during the meetings. According to Beijing News report on May 23rd, Jianjing Tan, deputy to the NPC, suggested setting up a special fund for blockchain industry development. If accepted, this fund would be led by the government. The aim of the fund is to support the development and growth of a number of promising blockchain enterprises, encouraging blockchain technology innovation, and cultivate a number of unicorn enterprises in the blockchain space, says Tan. By supporting the development of the blockchain industry, Tan believes it will modernize the country's governance system. Blockchain technology not only will be a great tool to push China towards smart governance and high trust society, it can also help China to gain an upper hand globally in the future development of the technology. According to Tan, he thinks by taking this technology innovation lead, China will be able to better protect its sovereignty and national security. Tan suggested that a clear national blockchain industry development plan should be defined. He explained that from the bottom technology standard, middle industry application development to the top level system design, the national blockchain technology industry and supervision three-dimensional strategic planning system should be well coordinated. The new economic potential of the new economic potential and new job opportunities derived from blockchain technology is huge. However, Tam pointed out that currently the number of limited blockchain enterprises, its scalability and lack of talent in information has been the main problems preventing the blockchain ecosystem from developing as established a well-established ecosystem. So China is taking this a lot more seriously than America is, and I find this to be interesting because we could be doing something similar here, but we, you know, the bureaucratic red tape doesn't allow for things like that to take place. And so I say us, meaning Black people, meaning Black Americans, we should be at the forefront of this. This is a great opportunity to actually engage in this type of industrialization. And so China taking the lead by creating a development fund speaks volumes about how seriously the market is and how important it is to them in terms of in terms of tech. We don't have equivalent system here in the United States for whatever reason, for obvious reasons that they just won't spend the money on something like that. I wish we had something like that in the Black community. So we move on to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from Forbes.com. Spending on blockchain solutions could surpass $16 billion by 2023. I won't read this whole thing. According to CB Insight, spending on blockchain solutions will surpass $16 billion by 2023. The data suggests that 58 industries have particularly limitless potential. It is no secret that blockchain technology is on the rise and it is here to stay. Over the last few years, major companies from Facebook, Samsung, Accenture, IBM, to Amazon have dipped their toes in the industry. Even LG has entered the space and is using facial recognition service that combines AI and blockchain to make payments in digital currencies. Whilst blockchain tech is still in its nascent stage, the impending growth opportunity suggests that it is here to stay. Here are 4 industries that could see big changes if blockchain technology is adopted. Digital banking, we've covered this many times before. Supply chain, we've covered that before. Fitness, med tech, and wearables. Now, this is something that we've talked about recently in terms of COVID. Wearable technology has become a staple for leading a healthy lifestyle, from tracking steps, monitor your heartbeat, to calorie intakes. With the outbreak of COVID-19, things have taken a new turn. Yeah, we just talked about this before. Asset management. We talked about asset management before. Monitors and all types of connected devices and things like that. In most enterprises, asset management is very, very important. Which of these technologies will have the biggest impact on the funds business? So artificial intelligence leads the way, but blockchain or distributed ledger technology is right behind by 28%, only 2% behind. And then big data, regulation tech, reg tech, and robotics. So interestingly enough, robotics is at the bottom, but AI and blockchain are synonymous. Okay, synonymous in the sense that if there's a high probability, if you're going to study AI and machine learning, blockchain is going to be a part of that ecosystem as well. Okay, and you can't just study blockchain by itself. You got to you got to study the other technologies that surround it, which is AI, machine learning, and IoT and big data. Okay, cloud computing, all of that stuff comes together. All right. So this is really just me giving a glance over, but $16 billion industry in the next 2.5 years. Okay, it's 2020 right now. They're saying by 2023, $16 billion, or could surpass $16 billion. This is a big market. This is a good time to actually get involved in the tech right now. You know, artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, machine learning, IoT, Internet of Things. We talked about that many times on here before. Got to study those 4 technologies if you want to get into tech now. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket real quick. Safe haven. Is Bitcoin actually worth the energy it uses? This is a pretty this is a topic in itself, but I'll go through it just a little bit. When it comes to thinking about the economic sectors and industry niches that consume the most energy, cryptocurrencies may not immediately come to mind, but for some of these crypto companies, their energy and carbon footprints are not just considerable, they are massive. The most famous example, Bitcoin, has an annual energy footprint slightly larger than the entire nation of Switzerland. The company's current energy consumption can be tracked here. Last year, the University of Cambridge created an online tool that allows users to compare the boggling energy consumption of Bitcoin to other entities. At the time that this platform debuted, the tool estimated that Bitcoin is using around 7 gigawatts of electricity, equal to 0.21% of the world's supply, according to BBC report. The shocking figure translates to as much power as would be generated by 7 Dungeness nuclear power plants at once. Sorry, got a connection issue here. How can one company that doesn't even produce a tangible product consume so much energy? It has to do with the process of mining Bitcoin, in which computers known as mining machines are connected to the cryptocurrency network. These machines have to do complex computational work to verify Bitcoin transactions that are made extra secure, but also extra labor intensive by blockchain technology. To make as much money from this process as possible, people often connect large numbers of miners to the network, even entire warehouses full of them, writes the BBC. That uses lots of electricity because the miners are more or less constantly working. While Bitcoin has been out of the headlines recently, greatly overshadowed by global pandemics and murder hornets, among other news cycle bogarts, cryptocurrency is far from yesterday's news, especially as we head into what will probably be a years-long recession in which inflation and market volatility can be expected. The bread and butter of cryptocurrency companies. CoinDesk columnist Nick Carter brought Bitcoin's energy footprint back into the public conversation when he published the last word on Bitcoin's energy consumption. Carter contends that while much ink has been spilled on the question of Bitcoin's energy footprint, there remain significant gaps in the conversation about this cryptocurrency's energy and carbon footprint. Amid the clarifying details and the energy mix calculations, he writes, we have lost sight of the most important questions. Anyone who wades into the muddy debate must consider the fundamentals before making a final assessment. According to Carter, these essentials are, in a nutshell, to understand is that energy is not globally fungible. To avoid falsely equating the energy footprint with carbon footprint, and the promising changing nature of Bitcoin security spend. By addressing these points, he says that we can finally put the Bitcoin energy debate to bed and mind with a clear conscience. Yeah, so I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the discussion about energy consumption has been rightly just. You can look at people's, when they put a simple meter on a miner machine and see how much consumption is coming from it. If you calculate that over, 100, 200 plus machines, you start to see where the calculation starts to go. But then, so like the article is saying, there's a difference between the carbon footprint and energy footprint. What's the difference between the two is for energy consumption, there has to be a justification for return on investment. Carbon footprint means how much pollution is it putting out. And in this regard, you're probably not putting out that much pollution. I haven't looked at the numbers myself, but I imagine that data centers run 24/7 and no one seems to have a problem with those. And so the consciousness of people saying, well, you're using up a lot of electricity. Well, yeah, you're going to use up a lot of electricity. Supercomputers use up electricity all the time, and no one seems to have a problem with that. And so I think that our approach to mining is very rudimentary. We're taking existing technology that's already on the shelf and we're just throwing it at, an application, which is the mining of cryptocurrencies. And so most of the hardware that's been thrown at it initially was never designed to do exactly that. It was just capable of doing that, but it wasn't designed for that. So if we had dedicated hardware at the time, I think we would have had less of a conversation, because when you have a tool or a vehicle for that matter, let's say, for most people, they have a sedan, in terms of a car. But if most people had pickup trucks, we would be able to move more goods per travel. And so the application of using a small compact sedan versus a pickup truck makes the difference. Anybody can stuff packages inside of a Nissan Versa, but it's not the same as picking up an F-150. And so we've thrown a bunch of subcompact vehicles at a problem that requires a specific sort of platform, like a pickup truck, like an F-150. And so that's where, we went wrong with Bitcoin mining calculations and consumption calculations and carbon footprint output. So that's my assessment of all of this. All right. We'll get to the next item on the docket. We were supposed to do this live stream about a week and a half ago. However, there was some issues with Zoom and YouTube, and there was some 403 errors, so some forbidden errors. We were not able to go live at all for this live stream. So this is about a week and a half behind. All right, this is from Hyperledger, the Linux Foundation. TSC approves Hyperledger Cactus as new project. Let me expand this out. We are thrilled to announce that the open source blockchain integration framework that Accenture and Fujitsu jointly contributed to Hyperledger Labs has been welcomed as the latest Hyperledger project. With this, the project receives a formal name, Hyperledger Cactus, and also benefits from resources and promise of longevity that come with the inclusion of the Hyperledger Greenhouse. 'Greenhouse. In the short 6 months since entering the labs, Hyperledger Cactus has attracted significant attention and become a locus of collaboration between developers from our teams at Accenture and Fujitsu, and dozens of others working on DLT platforms both inside and outside Hyperledger. We are very excited to carry this work of establishing an open integration protocol forward, setting our sights on increasing the number and diversity of perspectives and building the community and process maturity in order to graduate from incubation to active status as a project. Innovation in the blockchain space shows no signs of slowing down. This is amazing to see, but when it comes to the large-scale enterprise adoption today, this rapid pace of change can also be a source of risk. What if the platform I select gets leapfrogged? Or what if I need to conduct business with an ecosystem in the future that's using a different technology? These questions can manifest in a high-stakes decision to choose the right solution. But we live in the world of many networks and databases with differing business requirements. Some need to be fast, some need to store a lot of data, and some need strong resiliency properties. As businesses replace traditional infrastructure with multi-party systems, we need blockchain technology to handle a wide variety of possible use cases and requirements. In other words, there will be no one blockchain solution to rule them all. Brian Beltenoff describes this well as in his CoinDesk 2019 year in review. From here out, the basic business and technical questions: can this be used for real world use cases? Can competing vendors cooperate on common code and standards? Will be considered more or less answered, with new questions about governance of blockchain networks and interoperability between them taking center stage. Enterprises need to be able to confidently move forward with the blockchain that best meets their needs today, with the assurance they can integrate, communicate, operate, and transact with any other tech down the road. For example, imagine a fast blockchain used for processing small value financial transactions periodically that needs to communicate and even trade with more secure, slow blockchains that handle large assets or high value transactions. Banking focused blockchains might need to communicate with blockchains that are used to manage real estate. The possibilities and useful applications for blockchain integration services are quite large. So what is Hyperledger Cactus? Hyperledger Cactus is an Apache v2 licensed open source software development kit SDK, designed and architected to help maximize pluggability so that anyone wishing to use it to connect any DLT to others can do so by implementing a plugin. The pluggable architecture helps enable the execution of ledger operations across multiple blockchain ledgers, increasing Hyperledger Bezel, Hyperledger Fabric, Quarter, Aquarium available today, with the aim of developers continually adding support for new blockchain in the future. The beauty of open source, in particular, the permissively, sorry about that. The beauty of open source in particular is permissively licensed Hyperledger flavor means that each entity that writes a blockchain plugin can decide whether to contribute to the community for ongoing maintenance and be used by all or keep it private. In either case, the core integration framework will always be available under the Apache v2 license and maintained by the Hyperledger community. Accenture filed 2 patents on the approach and are making the patents available through this code under the Apache 2 license. In our review, the pluggable design combined with Hyperledger governance make this the right solution to the blockchain interoperability challenge. We at Accenture and Fujitsu realized the market need for blockchain integration independently and quickly realized the opportunity to collaborate. Accenture began working on the blockchain interoperability challenge in 2018 and realized that long-term success hinged on building a broader ecosystem around the project, which led to the open sourcing this work to Hyperledger Labs in November 2019. Fujitsu came aboard as key collaborators at last year's Hyperledger Tokyo Member Summit and contributed the connection chain code base in December 2019. Then the two companies considered a unified architecture based on the two code bases. The results are described in the white paper. Hyperledger Labs provides an easy way to test the technical and community viability of potential new Hyperledger projects. It's a valuable initial step to determine interest prior to undertaking the significantly more intense process of proposing a new Hyperledger project. So what's happening here is that there needed to be some way to handle all of these blockchains that, that are in the market, probably well over 100, okay? And what's happening here is that there's no real way for them to immediately communicate with each other, regardless of what they are, whether it's construction or real estate or banking or asset management, so on and so forth, IoT, academic. There's no way for all of these to really communicate with each other, and that's where Cactus comes in. And so this becomes a hub. It's basically a hub and spoke perspective, the hub being the Cactus and the spoke being the many different blockchains that it needs to interact with and become interoperable. And so I see this as a good thing. Hyperledger, in my opinion, is the way forward. Okay, they have a lot of support, so to speak. There's ongoing projects, a lot of people contributing to it, a lot of eyes are on it, so they catch a lot of the bugs. And the development is actually is pretty robust. Okay, so there's what blockchain has done is open up a whole new set of careers within the space itself. And so the question now becomes, well, what kind of skills do you need to get into blockchain? Okay, what's transferable? What works? Where are you coming from? Is the real question. Okay, you coming from the help desk? Let's say if you're coming from the help desk, okay, you're fresh out, you're looking for opportunities to get into blockchain. Okay, fine. Let's talk about what some of the skills are. Okay. What are some of the skills inside this sort of thing? Software development, the ability to code is really the question, because the platform is already there, that you just need to add code to it, okay? Cryptography, do you understand cryptography? Have that background, okay? Web applications, do you understand that HTML5 and Web 3.0 or full stack development, right? You don't need to be an expert in this area. You just need to be able to understand that the API that is used to connect blockchain to the front, the front of a landing page or something to that effect is actually going to be critical, because you're going to be ingesting data to the infrastructure itself, so that the data can be the data can have a path to ride on. Okay, data analytics. Okay, you need to have some understanding of data itself. All right. These are the critical areas for blockchain. Linux development. Do you understand Linux administration? Okay. Cloud. Do you understand cloud? Do you understand AWS, Azure? OpenStack for that matter. Oracle's really starting to pick up traction now. Even Facebook has been rumored to be coming out with their own cloud development platform, as well as Apple. Apple is getting into the cloud game now. Okay. Cybersecurity to a certain extent, but more about data security than anything else, not so much as cyber. Okay. Because and the reason why I'm saying this is because information that gets stored on a blockchain is really the critical aspect. You're not so much as worried about the traditional cyber aspect of firewalls and, switches and, which different ports are open and whatnot. Once the data is on there, the data is on there. It's more about governance. Okay. Governance is really key. Governance and risk management is going to be really key. So cyber risk on the blockchain is really going to be more important than just cyber security as a whole. The typical cybersecurity world, is bang, bang, shoot 'em up. It's the Wild West. And in terms of distributed ledger technology and blockchain, that's not really the case. If we have a private blockchain network to ourselves between myself and Bank of America or, TD Ameritrade or something like that, that's a different ballgame. Okay. We need to know who's looking at this data that we put on there. Who's looking at this information that we put on there? Is this information secure? How is it secure? Who's viewing it? Who's the last one to view it? Who can view it? Okay. So those are the critical aspects, cryptography, coding. You choose what language you like. Right now, Python is popular. Tomorrow, it could be C#. C# is starting to gain a lot of traction. Okay. If we're just talking about open source languages, even Bash is still important because a lot of your 99% of your blockchain platforms run on top of Linux. Okay. Java is still important. Python, Java, C#. Okay. Rust, Go. Very common languages. Depending on which blockchain you're going to be working on, there's going to be a specific language that's tied into it. Python is usually interoperable with most, if not all, blockchain platforms. C# is usually interoperable with most blockchain platforms. But Go and Solidity, those are usually tied in with Ethereum. Okay. Yeah, Ruby. Not the YouTuber in the manosphere, Ruby. You want to study that too. But depends on what you're going to be working on. Is it smart contracts? Is it full application development? Is it going to be, is it going to just be maintenance? Let me outline some of the roles that's going to be available for this. You're going to have a blockchain analyst, an analyst or a consultant, somebody who just interacts with the client and says, what are your needs? And translate those needs into the desires that the client wants. Okay. Whether or not this is feasible. That's the role of the analyst and the consultant. Okay, the engineer is going to be the one who's going to lay down the work, right? The DevOps aspect of blockchain development. Okay. And then you start talking about the architect. The architect is going to look at an enterprise's whole entire environment and see whether or not how this works, how this fits in there. I foresee that you're going to see a CBO, a Chief Blockchain Officer, come out of all of this. Okay. You're going to have an analyst, consultant, engineer, architect will be the Chief Blockchain Officer. Okay. And that Chief Blockchain Officer will probably sit next to the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, which then sits under the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. Okay. Cybersecurity won't be that much involved unless SecOps gets integrated into the whole process. SecOps will always be there. They just will interface, you know, from an external standpoint and do the auditing and do the you know, the ops work on it in terms of security. Creating dashboards, looking at different processes and you know, user engagements and behavioral analytics and things of that nature. That will be SecOps role. Okay. And so these are the key areas, you know, that's going to be taking place in the next, you know, 6 months or so. Right now, we're still in the early phases of blockchain. I mean, due to COVID and due to the pandemic, you saw a lot of slowdown. So we're probably about 6 months behind in terms of where we should be. But I think things will start to pick up by later this year, by January of next year, 2021. Yeah, engineering cannabis is right on the money. He says that, yeah. He says that those roles exist in IBM. Yeah. IBM is pretty knee deep inside blockchain right now, so it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, Black Quizzer says there's some other language that's floating around in my space. It's real popular, but it's escaping me right now. Yeah, he says Ethereum is really making moves right now. They are rolling in an upgrade soon. That's supposed to be a big deal. I don't know. I don't really follow Ethereum all that much, only when it comes across my my feed. But Ethereum does have a head start, so it doesn't surprise me. They do have a head start. But yeah, let me if I don't see anybody coming. Oh, who's this? Oh, engineering cannabis.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on?
All right.
So you mentioned some of the skills required to basically learn how to basically get in, basically transfer your skills to the blockchain. So again, you mentioned the programming skills, but again, do you necessarily need programming to actually be involved in the blockchain
Well,
itself?
not so much as needed, but you need to understand code, right? So if you look at the if someone shows you the code and they ask you to evaluate whether or not this is feasible, you have to actually be able to just open up, you know, look at the code and just glance at it and say, okay, I see where, you know, where the syntax may be wrong.
And in terms of, do you see blockchain improving as it goes on? Do you see more companies adopting this technology, or because in China you're seeing the adoption rapidly growing, but again, I'm not seeing it in the European nation or especially in the United States. So when do you believe that this technology will be adopted, especially in the United States, and especially because it has numerous applicability in different technologies, especially with AI, data science, and all that? You can apply blockchain to it, and especially with even with different industries. So when do you believe the adoption in the United States will progress, or do you think it's still going to be a slow adoption?
I think the adoption is going to be slow due to the bureaucratic red tape. The European Union will probably have a faster adoption rate than the United States because of their cohesiveness, right? GDPR, those type of things are going to, those sort of regulations are going to force many companies to adopt blockchain in a way that they have to remove data of European citizens, right? And that stuff has to be confirmed, and that gives visibility to the European Union, right? So in the United States, we don't have that problem so much. California has their own data laws. New York has their own data laws. Massachusetts has their own data laws. New Jersey has their own data laws, and so does Ohio has their own data laws, and so on and so forth. Different states have different laws, but the federal government will have to come up with their own sort of schema as to how this is going to work for multinational corporations.
And also with China basically adopting this, and with the rapid rise of the COVID-19, and with a much data, basically probably will be, if China adopts it, will be going into the blockchain, especially the data from the basically prediction of how COVID-19 spreads, and to prevent the next pandemic. Now, if that knowledge will be able to be transferred to another country, another um, entity, do you think adopting the blockchain will be at that point more vital at that point?
Yeah, the only difference is I don't see the United States creating their own indigenous blockchain tech, right? I think they're just going to adopt whatever Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, blockchain as a service is what they're going to adopt. They're not going to try to reinvent the wheel.
So, but companies like, again, Apple and all that, because I know IBM is the front runner in terms of blockchain.
Mhm.
In terms of other companies adopting it, do you think it's also going to be a slow process too?
No, not necessarily, because everybody's going to be fighting for patent submission, right? So whoever submits the most patents will be the ones to dominate the standards, right? They'll be able to push the standards. I think you're going to see a lot of companies, Fidelity, JP Morgan, all of these companies are going to start submitting all types of patents for the most silliest things that possible, but it's all about a race, right? For submitting as many patents as possible. And so those companies will be in a race to the bottom for blockchain patent development. And so you'll see a lot of those companies just push a whole lot of patents out just for the hell of it, because they have to dominate. Whereas in China, Japan, Southeast Asia, there's going to be a direct correlation between every single blockchain patent that's submitted to the application that it is tied into. Um, and so there's not a race for them. It's more about what makes sense for them at the time that it is. You know, what's practical and what's not. In the United States, it's not really like that. It's about who can fire off the most amount of patents. What's going on, Nagon? We got Nagon 11 on the panel.
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's going on? What's going on, fellas? What's going on, Engineering Cannabis?
Chilling, man, chilling.
All right.
Yeah.
What's going on, Nago?
You, man, you.
Quick.
I'm just climbing in. I'm just getting in here, so I'm just trying to see what's up.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
So, do you believe the pandemic will accelerate adoption, especially because now China is adopting it? Do you think this pandemic will accelerate the adoption of blockchain, especially right now?
I think depending on where you're coming from, and will determine that, right? The United States doesn't necessarily want to share a whole lot of information to the public, right? Freedom of Information Act be damned. They definitely don't want to share a whole lot of it, especially if it's in regards to COVID. But for other countries, especially in Africa, in Latin America, and Asia, these are actually tools. The blockchain is actually an instrument that can be leveraged to help manage a lot of what they did not know and how to actually share information sharing. Before they couldn't do it. In Cuba, I was looking some old videos from last year, the year before that, when Trump came into office. They were still using paper. They were not using computers.
They were still using paper?
Yeah, the United States has an embargo on technology and whatnot that can be shared with Cuba. And so they have a hard time adopting and making digital transformation because they're on the blacklist. Okay. So they can't even get certain computers that have certain components in it because they cannot be sold to Cuba.
So they couldn't even do an Excel spreadsheet on a
Nope.
basic.
Unless you're talking about from like the, an IBM, from like the 1990s or something like that. Maybe not MS-DOS or something, but what's the point in that?
Yeah, that's old.
And so for countries like Cuba and other countries in Latin America, how do you have all these doctors, but how do you interact with the rest of the world? Right? There's nothing stopping them from actually cultivating their own blockchain solution. And that's where guys like myself and those of us on the panel in the chat, that's where we come in and we look at their environment and say, let's put all of this on a blockchain and let's make it transferable to the WHO and the CDC and many of these other these global body institutions.
Wow.
Yeah, that happens there's about 7 countries that's on the blacklist: Syria, Iran, North Korea, obviously, Cuba's on the blacklist. Sudan's on the blacklist. Libya is on the blacklist. They can't get access to certain technologies because of the embargo. So
Mike, in terms of the continent, do you see a lot of blockchain developers in there, or is it because is there more education needed in terms of blockchain development itself?
You're starting to see more blockchain developers, more blockchain advocates, if anything else. Developers is far few in between, but advocates are there. So I think the transition for blockchain development will be relatively easier for them because they're coming from an area of necessity and not one of riches and wealth, right? They're not looking at the big $500,000 check, right? They're looking at, how do I make this work for us on the ground? How can we leverage this technology for us on the ground? And so that's where they go from being an advocate to being a developer.
What industries have you seen basically adopted especially in Africa, the blockchain technology?
Agriculture. Agriculture is really big. Civic governance is really big. How do you get people's driver's licenses and identities and stuff? Identity management on a continent is very huge. You have 600 million people who don't have a proper bank account because they don't have a proper identity. No one knows what country they belong to and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done. How do you take 600 plus million people? And that's just a rough estimate that they have from last year. How do you take 600 plus million people and give them proper identification in such a short amount of time? That's a challenge.
And also,
well, I was going to ask, what about with respect to healthcare there as well?
In terms of what?
Blockchain, how would that be applicable there with respect to patients and so forth, and maybe tracking diseases? I don't know, because I know that healthcare is a big issue there. Like
medical records are really big, right? So how do you share? Zimbabwe, South Africa share borders with each other. So does Botswana and Namibia. Well, how do they share all this information with each other? Right. That becomes a challenge. That becomes a problem, and that's where putting medical records on a blockchain actually matter. But you have to come up with a common format. The common format is going to be necessary, and so someone has to drive that process. So there have to be a consortium agreed upon per region about how do we come to an agreement on a format standard for healthcare records, electronic healthcare records. Go ahead, Engineer Candace.
In terms of we talk of IoT and all that, where can you basically pinpoint a realistic application of blockchain, IoT, and AI? where do you see a realistic application is going to be had in terms of infusing those three technologies?
Micro banking, and actually, surprisingly enough, agriculture, agri-tech, and I want to say wildlife conservation. How many trees are on the continent? Where are they? Right? How many rhinoceroses and elephants are still alive? Which, how many lions and so on and so forth because of the gaming and poaching and stuff that goes on over there. You can cut down on a lot of the the black market with this technology and IoT. Not just standardized IoT devices, but drone technology, drones that communicate with devices on the ground that look at these sort of rare animals or endangered species on the ground and track them all so that they're not being actually poached upon. There's a lot of application that goes behind that.
So again, with the startup, with all this, do you see the startup mentality into the blockchain, and do you see in a couple of years seeing how the startup mentality will drive blockchain, IoT, and all that, especially within Silicon Valley and all the places? Do you see that application being driven in those places?
Yeah. I think
in context of startups.
Yeah, because if you're waiting on IBM to open up a building or something like that to start hiring people, then you're going to be SOL. You're going to be waiting a long time. And so you got to create your own startups. I think startup culture is more prevalent there than it is here in let's say in the diaspora. Mostly because we have access to larger institutions that surround us: MIT, Harvard, Yale, Duke University, and those tier 1, division 1 schools offer a lot of opportunities to get involved in projects. But on the continent, you don't really have that. So people have to work from the ground up, and that's where startups come in. We got Black Wizard on the panel. What's going on? I think he's having mic issues.
Yeah, my bad. I just bought a new mic and I was like trying to figure out what the hell was going on, but yeah. What's up, guys?
Sure,
how you doing?
What's going on?
Yeah, I was just I've been doing a lot of research on blockchain implementation and things like that, especially with COVID and stuff like that. I think one of the questions was like what industries are kind of looking into doing it in the near future. In America, it's looking like it's going to be logistics. There's a lot in like supply. They were talking about a coming, I guess, meat shortage or something of that kind of nature with the virus and everything like that. And I saw a bunch of articles talking about like, is the answer to the logistics problems, blockchain technology and implementing those kind of things. And a lot of people have been kind of going into that. It looks like Ethereum actually was one of the ones that was being looked into, and it's really popular in the UK as well. So as far as if this is going to be implemented, I think it is. And I think it's going to be a lot sooner than people might think.
Now, you're a Linux developer, are you not?
I am.
Okay. You're in the right place. I mean, in terms of making that transition into blockchain, most of Hyperledger runs on top of Linux. So.
Yeah, like all that stuff you were talking about, I was like, man, this is all up my alley. Like, I'm already doing all this stuff, like for like a little bit of it for the most part, you know.
Yeah, I got offered a role, and I talked about this many times on here, but this is your first time being on here. I got offered a role from New York early last year around this time. Over 275K for a blockchain developer's role in New York. Okay,
Good Lord.
At a startup. Blockchain is paying big dividends on coming out of NYC and Cali. This is, I didn't take the role because I did not feel comfortable taken on something like that. I just did not have that skill set. But because of my IT background in cybersecurity, they said, you know, you would be great for this role. And I said, nah, that's not me, man. I can't take on something like that, a project that big.
Yeah, the shaky thing about it, I think, is that it's just so new right now. You know, like nobody's really doing it. You know, if you're looking for expertise, it's like kind of a lot of even if you have the skill set, it's still a lot of OJT. You know, like it's still a lot of kind of like figuring it out as you go, and that's some scary shit with this kind of technology.
Yeah, most of it is do it on your own, basically read and basically figure it out.
That's why I thought Mike would have been good with it, because he knows his way around technology, and now if you just coming to see what might be the best applications to handle a problem, then you start to get more familiar with those. With the application you're looking at, you get more familiar with the language that you might want to get a bit nicer in, and next thing you know, you're kind of on your way. I think that would have been a pretty unique opportunity. You would have learned an awful lot. And
learning on the job would have been, it would have been convenient. So
yeah.
Because they're expecting you to hit the ground running with this. They need somebody who can lead this type of stuff. That's what a developer does. They kind of take the lead. They don't really. They're renegades. Blockchain developers are renegades, man. They don't really take orders from anybody. They kind of just, run their own sort of operation, and they're hard to control. That's why they're so hard to find, because they usually work for themselves. They're mercenaries.
Yeah, I know. Because it seems like
right now. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because it seems like it would like work a whole lot closely to like R&D.
Yeah.
And in that kind of realm, pretty much anybody involved in the R&D spectrum, like they're just kind of doing their own kind of freelance thing. You know what I mean? Like they're like, even the people like system administrators, engineers, that kind of stuff. They're just kind of like, it's kind of like, this is what we need, figure it out, come back at the meeting or whatever.
That was what drew me into it, because again, like data science and creating algorithms, it's almost like you're playing around, seeing how the algorithms work. So with the blockchain, it was the same way. Will this contain my data? Can this be crackable? So that basically intrigued me into blockchain itself, programming blockchain, learning how everything works. So it's intriguing too. And there's not much basically knowledge out there. You have to scour a lot to just try to learn it, and basically bits and pieces everywhere. There isn't a one sustainable place where you say, I'm going to learn everything about blockchain, Hyperledger in just one place.
That's a fact.
You have to scour. I mean, books. I've read books. I've gone to website. I've read articles. I've read everything just to figure out just one piece of code, just looking at the cryptography, how this works, what is the meaning of that. I had to go to different research papers, different books, just to figure out one line of code in blockchain. So that's how it is. You just look at one line of code. How does this work? What does it play? What key component does it play in this blockchain? How can I figure it out? Just that line of code, you got to look through books and papers and all that, and that's how you learn it.
Yeah, when I was on the continent, when I was in Rwanda, I met a brother, man, who considers himself to be a blockchain alchemist. Okay, very sharp brother, came from IBM, electrical engineering background. Now he's a blockchain consultant on the continent. He's from Austin. He's actually from Jamaica, but he lives in Austin. Very sharp brother, man. Chopped up a lot of game with him for like 3 or 4 days. Still talk to him. He considers himself to be a blockchain alchemist. So that's the sort of perspective that we're seeing over on the continent. A lot of opportunities over there. The governments are basically saying, if you have a solution that works for them, bring it and you will be compensated for it. So that's the sort of game that's going on over there. Bring your tech with you.
It's wide open over there, man. That shit's wide open.
It's amazingly wide open over there, because they're looking to make their digital transformation from a nation state standpoint. People have to understand that what colonialism did to the continent, extracted resources from them and left you know, and left the countries in dire states. And they're just now recovering from a lot of it, despite what people think, you know, about incompetence on the continent from a leadership standpoint. A lot, they can't afford to go back to, you know, second and third industrialization. That time is already come and gone. Fourth industrialization is what they're looking at. Cyber connected systems. How do we leverage drones and IoT and EV and, you know, blockchain and cloud and big data and cybersecurity? How do we take all of this into consideration? They can't afford to go out and buy Microsoft Windows laptops and Apple MacBooks and stuff like that. They have to rely on open source. Okay, Linux, Ubuntu is very popular over there for obvious reasons. Very popular, and so there's a necessity to leverage on free tools in order to cultivate better, you know, better transitions. Like I said, they're not going to go out there and spend $2,000 or $3,000 on an Apple MacBook. You know, when they can buy 300 plus laptops with just $3,000 American dollars. That's absurd.
I don't know much about what's been going on the or what's going on like real time on the continent. I only know the stuff that I've been reading. So I'm just gonna say the stuff that I've been reading. You guys can correct me if I get anything messed up. But from what I'm reading, like as far as like blockchain is concerned, and especially implementing things like cryptocurrencies and things like that over on the continent is not only is it ripe for this kind of stuff, they're already like getting into it. Like it's not like over here where we got all the like you said, like people still doing stuff by paper, even in banking. People still doing stuff by paper, like and when they hear about these blockchains that are doing things like XRP or Ripple and solving remittances without all the hands in the way, you got banks over here with their like 1970s computers. Like what do we need that for? You know what I'm saying? But over there, like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, all this stuff, like it's like you said, like the third industrialization. That stuff. It's almost like a blessing that kind of didn't happen for over there because they don't have all the structure that's getting in the way of them implementing the new system. So like when it comes to like 5G and like implementing these new systems, it's like happening at lightning speed over there. At least that's what I'm reading. And they're like hungry for the people with the knowledge just so they can get it up as fast as they can, because the United States is essentially behind the ball because we got so much of this old technology up that we got to worry. Not only do we got the red tape that we got to figure out, then we got to get rid of all the old stuff too. So it's like, we are really behind the ball over here.
Yeah, the picture I'm showing right here is just a graphic of industrialization. So first industrialization was mechanization and steam and water power systems, which is during slavery. And then second revolution was mass production of electricity. That was post-slavery. And then came into third revolution or industrialization, where you had IT systems, automation, robotics, in factories and whatnot, auto manufacturing and stuff like that. That's what ramped up a whole lot of car production and computer systems. That came out of the third wave industrialization. That was the 1970s. Okay. Fourth wave industrialization or fourth industrialization is where we are right now. Cyber physical systems, cyber connected systems. That's the whole purpose of IPv6, 5G, cloud computing, big data, blockchain. All of these things are connected to fourth industrialization. And so Africa missed the boat, and Latin America missed the boat on first, second, and third wave. They were always decades behind in comparison to the West. Now with fourth industrialization, they're right on the cusp of it. So they're probably, let's say they're probably about 12 to 18 months behind, let's say the West, right? But they don't have to worry about laying down big fiber network cables into the ground. They just move the whole entire continent with one big fiber cable and then call it a day. Okay.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
when you talk about content, I know because you talk about the startup life, but all I want to know first is it necessary? Do you need? Because when everybody thinks of the continent, going to the continent, they think of monetary aspects. They don't think of the skill aspect. So can you put a little light on it? That's not only the monetary aspect, but the skill aspect is more as important as the monetary aspect in going to the continent, especially starting a startup itself.
Yeah, that's a good point because the continent, and I want to throw Latin America in there as well because they're both one and the same. The continent is not so much about money, but how do you control and dominate a certain sector, and contribute to the transformation, right? You're putting yourself in the driver's seat for digital transformation and fourth industrialization, and so your earnings are going to come back from prominence on the continent. This, engineering cannabis, he went over there and he did great things. Your name's going to be in the rafters for all of that type of stuff. People are going to come back to you. That's how you build up that's how you build up organizations and whatnot. When Facebook only recently started turning profit, okay? Facebook didn't turn profit for 10 years. So it wasn't so much about money for them. I mean, they were burning through money, but they were not turning profit for over 10 years. They didn't start turning profit until post-Obama era. And so when you go over there, you shouldn't go over there with the anticipation that we're going to make billions of dollars and whatnot and walk around like, rock stars and stuff. No, that's not the case.
One aspect we usually don't touch about is the human capital, because there's a lot of smart, if it's Nigerians, Kenyans, there are a lot of smart people in there. The utilization of human capital in terms of utilizing people and training and basically giving knowledge back, and also getting basically a symbiotic relationship between the people in the continent and you within the startup. So that's now basically looked into more.
Yeah, a lot when we think about like what brings value, I think a lot of people get caught up in the money aspect of that like they're looking at profits, they're looking at how money is moving and things like that, and that's true to some degree. It's like what money movement and all that stuff is necessary, but it comes first with people, and people bring the value to industry first. So it's like with what Mike was talking about with Facebook, even in YouTube, like YouTube has only recently started turning a profit. It's been around for quite a while. So it's like you have an idea, and then that idea brings the value. And right now, we're living in a time where it's a race of these ideas to get to I guess, like, honestly, usurp first place in the global sphere. Like whoever gets to the fourth, and whoever gets and realizes the fourth industrial revolution first is going to set the tone for everybody else. And everybody right now is trying to get in that space. And Africa, Latin America, like Mexico, if they wasn't like right underneath us, but Latin America, and China are the ones in the prime position to do that. I mean, you got China already with their digital yuan that's been out since the beginning of May. So it's and it's been being used in McDonald's and I think Starbucks and things like that as a test. It's like this, right now is the time. Like if you got the skills, you want to go to these places and really, because you're going to be the guy that people find in the books. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The thing is, think of fourth industrialization on the continent in Latin America, in some parts even Central Asia. We are right now with blockchain where computing was coming out of Silicon Valley, meaning out of the garages of Steve Jobs and Wozniak, okay? When they were working, tinkering on these computers in their garages, no one knew that what they were doing would lead to a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and that they are at the forefront of. That's where we are right now. So you factor in, that was the 1970s, early 1980s. No one knew that these little hobbies that Steve Wozniak and Jobs were playing around with would eventually turn into what it is today. No one knew that. And we were a lot. I mean, Nagone 11 is the oldest person on the panel, but he was around back then. He played with the Packet Bells and the Tandy TSR 80s and whatnot. He played with those back then. So
sure did.
And so, he was able to see the transition in real time. We weren't really around for that, but I mean, we're using the technology now, so, we have an opportunity right now to chart our own course on this and how we want to see things play out. Not so much from a financial aspect, from a monetary aspect, but from a developer's aspect and the legacy aspect.
So this question for both you, Mike and Nagone. So what will you advise young guys coming out of college or just coming out of a code boot camp? What will you advise individuals to say, look at this industry, pick a domain or pick a certain industry, look at this technology. So how will you suggest them starting out in terms of going through it, especially with you, Nagone, with you looking at human resources, looking at different areas of hiring, and Mike knowing your background in cybersecurity and all that. So what will you advise younger people coming out saying, hey, I'm interested in a startup life. I'm not, will you say go learn, get experience first, then transfer into a startup? So what ways will you say a transition can occur with, especially coming out?
Mike, you want to go ahead on that? Now, I'll take it after. If that's you want to go ahead.
Yeah. From a coding bootcamp standpoint, I think proper literacy of a language is more important than the post aspect of the bootcamp itself. And so you get acquainted with the language of your choice, and that's preferable to you, that you're comfortable with. And then you look at the dozen industries, even traded on the stock market today. Right now, what's hot is video conferencing because of COVID and the pandemic. Telehealth, telemedicine, those are, also a part of that same ecosystem. And so you have to start looking at what's hot right now and where's the longevity in each of these sort of avenues. We know telehealth is here to stay. We know video conferencing is here to stay. Social media is here to stay, but can be leveraged in ways that and be exploited in ways that had not been seen before. Before YouTube was just a video sharing site. Now Khan Academy has exploited the video sharing of social media to be a major empire for him now in his platform. And so we have to kind of look at different areas of these avenues that are going to have exponential growth and can be exploited to have exponential growth. When we look at the continent, we look at Latin America, we have to look at how do you make the transition from zero, from no industrialization in some areas to complete industrialization, fourth industrialization overnight. That sort of transition, that rapid transition. Coding is going to be a large aspect, but then there's other pillars that's going to play into it as well from an infrastructure standpoint, cloud computing, and what's the other aspect is going to be application-wise, where does this go, right? Healthcare, civic governance, IT governance, civic governance, identities and things like that, monetary systems such as micro banking and microfinance and so on and so forth. You go ahead, Nicole.
All right, I think Mike covered that pretty well, but my view, just looking at it from the standpoint of recruiting and looking at IT, certainly it's an application development from the development side. I know cybersecurity and all that's big, but really developing and moving along with apps in all these different industries is where it's at. Now, if you want to start at a startup, it might be a little more difficult. Startups tend to like to bring people in who have a certain skill set to help them kind of move forward. I think where you might want to start out is a solid company where you can get a good deal of experience. Now, how you come into that company might be a couple of different ways. You could come in from the help desk side. You could come in from, let's say, from the systems admin side. Let's say from Unix or something like that. Where people have gotten some of their certifications in as beginners and just coming in as entry level and start to learn from there. But as I say, with all the technology people that I talk with, I'm talking to two tomorrow. It's the best technology guys that I see, the best technologists that I see, they have a multivaried skill set, because one of the things that you bring up and what Mike's talking about is so many different avenues open up that I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see it all. People knew that Zoom and go to meeting and some of these other things were going to be pretty decent, pretty sizable. They were scaling pretty well. They've been around for a while, but right now, nobody saw really COVID coming the way that it did. Even though people have been transitioning more towards working from home, there's a lot of that going on. This has been accelerated. Zoom and all that. Boom, everything is Zoom now. I was on a Zoom meeting right before I came over here, and I've got a big Zoom meeting this weekend. I mean, just Zoom. It's Zoom all day long, and nobody really saw that. Zoom. I mean, no one really saw. So the apps developed for that, huge. You couldn't really see that impact hitting as fast and as hard as it has. That's going to be the same going into the future. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come up that we can't fully anticipate right now. We know certainly healthcare, certainly banking, microfinancing, all that going to be very big. The trading business, as far as financial services, definitely going to be playing huge. Of course, blockchain development, that's going to be big. I suggest people really look to really get some skill sets in there. With even some of the new languages that are actually starting to roll up. That's actually being applied to blockchain. But I can tell you, Python is Python, the old faithful, old Sapphire, still there. So there's a lot of different areas you can go to, but my favorite is certainly, and I think where I see a lot of demand, application development developers. That's where I see a lot of this really going. Of course, your systems admin, your administrators, and all that going to be big. Your networking, big, but app dev. This is where it's going to be, and I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future as these things grow and expand into businesses or industries that are going to get a lot bigger than they are now, that we might not fully see all the way, but events can come about and change the dynamics overnight, as we're seeing here. So that tends to answer somewhat of your question, Engineering Cannabis?
It does. Okay, this is my last question. In terms of with this economic crisis coming out and with everybody being affected, do you believe blockchain, IoT is a good investment in time and monetary?
Hell yes.
So,
Mike said, hell yes.
Do that shit yesterday.
No, I missed the question. What was it?
Do you think with the economic crisis coming up, recession, all that, high unemployment, do you think investing in learning blockchain, IoT, data science, all this, it's a good investment to basically tackle the recession, what's coming up? Do you believe that's going to be a good investment?
You're talking about a 150% return on investment. Okay.
Whoa.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum. Go ahead.
Yeah, most of your blockchain data science courses and whatnot, although, data science is a little bit of a questionable thing because, different perspectives come into play and say, oh, you need a PhD to be a data scientist. Most of these boot camps and whatnot that are 6 months, 9 months long, that cost maybe anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000. The return on investment of that is a salary of excess $100,000 coming out the gate. I don't care for any one of those, whether you're talking about cybersecurity, blockchain, cloud computing, IoT, administration and things, and IoT engineering and stuff like that. I got offered a role earlier this week to work at a medical device company here locally on medical IoT devices, pacemakers and stuff like that they're working on. From a cybersecurity aspect, they wanted me to work on it. I just did not have the experience of being a product security manager on medical IoT devices. That being said, if you have a background in IoT, that's a surefire win. They're talking 170 grand just for that role by itself. Okay. You're talking about spending anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000 on a boot camp or some kind of Udacity nano degree or micro degree or something like that. The return on investment is immense. It's immense. And you're talking about spending less than a year of your time doing it, 15 hours a week.
That's a tough request, 15 hours a week.
Yeah, well,
a lot of people can't do that.
Really? I see live streams going for 12 and 13 hours. How can that be the case?
Yeah, I'm just joking. 15 hours a week, not so no. I'm just joking. So no, but I'm just asking, making sure everybody knows that the investment in learning this technology is basically vital, especially with everybody talking about recession, everybody in YouTube talking about recession and all that.
I posted the blockchain blockchain discounts last month for the month of May from Linux Foundation. Okay, they ran a 30-day blockchain discount on their Hyperledger courses. Couldn't beat that. You're talking what $50-$60? That's something that usually goes for $300-$400. Couldn't beat that.
Yeah, because everybody talks about the recession and every bad output. Nobody talks about the solution. So this is one solution that basically you invest a little bit of money and a lot of time in it. It pays off. I know. I'm telling you right now, as a data scientist, I got a lot of job offers. So it's not if you're gonna get, it's when you're gonna get a job, or when you want to do a startup or anything. So it's a good investment. That's all I'm just saying.
Yeah, we got Jay on the panel too. What's going on, Jay?
Oh, what's going on, guys?
Chilling, bro. Chilling. What you got?
Nothing much. I'm just here listening in. My Hyperledger book just came in.
Okay.
So yeah, just going through that when I get some free time. But
yeah, absolutely.
Engineering cannabis. You ever want to come to New York? Let me know, man. It's opportunities for a guy like you here are extensive.
I already got something already lined up. So New York is. I think I'll wait for a while.
Yeah, I know you got. You guy like you ain't gonna have any issues, man. But, you ain't got no problems. I'm already knowing, but I'm saying, if you ever get adventurous and want to roll up here, it's a madhouse for guys like you.
My adventure is gonna be with a startup right now. I'm gonna do my own startup stuff, but especially back home in Nigeria and all that. So, yeah.
Did you guys see
a lot of startups? Anyway,
go ahead.
Oh, did you guys see anything interesting on the SBIR website?
SBIR.
Yeah, you remember I mentioned it.
Yeah. I've been going through it. I've been seeing a lot of looking for. There's a lot of technology, especially wireless. I've been looking at a lot of it. There's a lot of good stuff. I'm about to apply for 2 or 3 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of good sponsors. Yeah, you just
Well,
got to look. It takes hours to look through it, but
oh yeah, there are so many content.
yeah, there's so
Crazy.
many. It takes hours to
You
look.
got to use that filter.
Yeah, you're not telling me, but yeah, but I had to just go through each one, and I brought out like 3 or 4, wrote it down. I'm starting on the application, so yeah, there's a lot of good stuff down there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if you ever need tips on the how the paper should be structured, let me know. I've written.
Yo, no, I'll definitely contact you for that. Definitely. Thanks.
Yeah, I forgot about that myself. Just been working on other things, but the 5G aspect, we didn't really get a chance to get into that tonight, but the 5G aspect, 5G in itself has its own applications within the blockchain because of the fast connectivity that it has and what it offers from an infrastructure standpoint. And so when we look at this, when we talk about transferable skills, if you're coming from the help desk, I want to go into this real quick. If you're coming from the help desk, the help desk does have transferable skills, and the fact that you ask the right questions to the client in terms of what it is that they're looking for from blockchain or distributed ledger technology. So that customer service soft skills is transferable there. The ability to actually be as detailed as possible in your tickets and your incidents when you work in the help desk actually is transferable when you're dealing with clients that have enormous requests for a blockchain and a lot of questions. You got to be able to transfer all that stuff into layman terms in terms of consultancy. So though you can come in from the help desk and actually be a consultant. You won't be an architect or an engineer, but you can be a consultant and be able to engage clientele. You were going to say something?
It's also a good way. It's also a good way to segue to move into other areas as well from help desk. That's why I think people that come in to help desk, especially very young people coming in, it's a great way to come into a company and then really start to expand from there. I really think that is your A+, and then you get all that together, and then if you've got a good decent school background and so forth. Great way to start. And so many people start out from there and move so many different areas.
Is there, because you both talk of help desk, should there be a duration where you stay on the help desk like a couple of years and look at moving? Because we talk of help desk, but we don't talk of saying, hey, you can stay here 2-3 years, but definitely after this couple of years you need to transfer or you need to go somewhere else.
That's correct. I would say that's absolutely correct. Good 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe 3 at help desk. You should, because you're really going to pick up a lot from there. You should be making your moves. You should be in your company actually getting other types of certifications that they're paying for, because they'll sponsor that for you and stuff like that. You utilize that to move up the ranks, but definitely no more than 2 to 3 years if you definitely come in at entry level starting out, because you really don't want to be a permanent help desk guy. It's
no, they'll force you to transition.
Limited,
they'll force you to transition. A company that has good culture would force you to transition out of it. Doing your one-on-ones and stuff. They actually are good at moving people along because they have to. That's just that's the nature of the game.
Well, I know some companies that will move you because you're so good at that job. They say, hey, he's so good, let him or her stay there for a while. Because at that point, shouldn't you be saying, I want to move?
No. Well, most companies. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead. Because I was just going to say, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, they have to keep up with cost of living, and for what depending on if the cost of living can actually doesn't keep pace with with the wages, then they don't have any other choice but to kind of force you out. You'll leave on your own because you just need more money, depending on the sort of situation that you're in.
Help desk should never be a dead end situation. That should be something that you advance from, and that's why I say you get into a decent company, you come in the help desk. It's a great thing because that means you get in the ground floor, but you can start walking up the stairs, man. You can start making moves, and that's generally how I see especially younger people coming in to a company. If they come in and help desk, you come in there, but boy, you don't want to stay there, for too long. You want to move up and move into different areas. And then after a while, you get a lot of skills underneath your belt. You want to move out, go to another company, go to a startup or whatever, and really start doing your thing. But name of the game is to learn a lot of technology, and help desk is definitely an excellent place to start. Excellent. And that's how a lot of people do it.
Yeah. So those are the skills.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted. Did you start at help desk yourself, or how did you initially come in?
No, I got tossed into a data center. My first job was with AMD. I got tossed into the new data center here in locally, and they kind of left me to my own devices. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I had to figure it out on my own. I never worked help desk per se. I never worked a help desk job before, but I understand what goes on in there. But for me, help desk is something I had bypassed. So I got thrown into data centers and server work pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. And cannabis, did you start out? How did you start out when you first came into the game? Did you come in as app dev? How did you first enter into the business?
Cannabis is not here anymore.
Oh, he bounced? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but
right.
Black Wizard, have you worked help desk before?
Yeah, I was actually going to say I started in help desk.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on a.
That's what you started out, right?
Yeah. I started out on Comcast, doing just help desk calls there, and then it's like directly after that I went to the Navy, and that's when I was just kind of thrown into the data center kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, you went to the military. All right, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
But
think
where things are now. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't think Jay worked in IT per se. I think he just I think Jay was just in electronics, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of similar. Like usually, engineers like doing electronics usually start out as like applications engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much did the same thing, except that my first job was called sustaining engineer. So basically, it's just to get you acquainted with all the products, the technology, kind of test your skills before they give you a design from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess every industry kind of has that initiation phase.
Yeah, and I think it's good, man. I think it's good that people go through help desk, to get that experience. It's a necessary experience, in my opinion. To really be to really appreciate IT, you really have to go through that phase. And what happens sometimes on these live streams is that people want to go from 0 to 60, and they want to get right into blockchain, and like you don't even understand how to dual boot a system, but you want to get directly into blockchain. You got to kind of spend some time in IT to really understand how systems work, how enterprise governance works, IT governance works, those sort of critical aspects become very become a necessity when you're working in these areas. But thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those.
Hey, Mike. I just want to say, the key point you just made, I just want to say very quickly, managing expectations. And we want to say that all the time. Manage expectations. You put up a great point about people wanting to come in and jump out, make 60, 70 grand, jumping right out of the box. You got to put in some time. So I just want to make sure that people's expectations are managed, and you do have to, build up to that point, and it's going to take a little bit of time. That's all.
All right, shalom, everyone.